All right, so welcome back for this week's edition of Parsha and Parnasa. I'm really excited that you are joining me. So, something that I've always noticed is people define competition or competitors usually as the same thing. One business and another business, or one company and another company that have the same common interest, are getting the same results, same product or service, and they're targeting the same market. And while that's true, when I was reading this week's Parsha, I realized, you know what? There's actually more to just that example of what competitors really are. And in fact, what Rachel did in this week's Parsha, Parshas Vayetze, is what showed me that there's more to the definition of what competitors are. And she taught us how to actually outdo your competition, or one of the ways. So, what are competitors? Let's just kind of define the terms. So competitors are anyone who are competing for the same thing from the same source. So that could be siblings, right? Sibling rivalry is about two or more different siblings who are going after the same target, the same resource, the same attention, affection, love, money, appreciation, acknowledgement, praise, whatever it is, the same thing from the same source. Or they could be competing thoughts, right? You could have two thoughts that are literally trying to compete for the same source, the same emotion, the same attention in your own mind. And you could have businesses that are competing for the same thing from the same source, right? For the business from the same target audience, from the same target market. So in this week's Parsha, Leah and Rachel were actually sibling competitors because they were both married to Yaakov. Now, it becomes clear if you read the story that actually Rachel was the one who Yaakov wanted to marry, but Leah, which my heart goes out to her, Leah was the one who had to be married to her, marry Yaakov first, even though knowing that those first 7 years, she wasn't even wanted to be his spouse. He didn't work for 7 years to have her. Could you imagine every night when he came home from the field and she's like, oh, great, here's the husband who didn't want me, but my dad set me up with him first, right? It's very powerful. So what happened? So the pasuk tells us, Vayar Hashem ki sinua Leah. And so Hashem saw that Leah was hated. She saw that she wasn't desired by Yaakov. So what did he do? Vayiftach es rachma. He opened up Leah's womb, v'Rachel akar, and he made Rachel a barren woman. Meaning he basically said, I'm going to make it so that she is fruitful and she has children. She bears children to Yaakov, and Rachel's not going to, I'm going to even the scales here. I don't know if that's exactly what was God's calculation about evening the scales, but you get the idea. So we knew Yaakov favored Rachel, yet Leah delivered children and made him a father. So the scoreboard goes like this. Leah, 5 kids. Rachel, 0. So Vatera Rachel, the pasuk tells a few pasukim later, it says, Vatera Rachel ki lo yalda liYaakov. So Rachel realizes, hold on a second. My sister's having one kid after the next, after the next, after the next, but I'm not having any. And she became jealous of her sibling. Now think about this. Jealousy is like a hallmark sign of competitors. Vatomer el Yaakov, and she says to Yaakov, Havali banim, give me boys, give me children, give me sons. The im ayin, and if you're not going to give me kids, mesa anochi, I'm dead. I'm dead. What do you call a business that has lost to their competition? Dead. I mean, the analogies here are just so glaringly clear, right? They're jealous when they're not being able to be successful in the competition. And if they totally are losing and there's no light at the end of the tunnel, the business is dead. So what changed the situation? So as co-wives, right, as wives that shared a husband, they took turn with who had a night with their spouse. So one day Reuven went out and he found dudaim, which we understand to be fertility plants. Rachel sees Reuven coming back, and Reuven is the firstborn son of Leah, so he's bringing them to his mom, clearly. And so Rachel goes, hold on a second. I definitely could use some of those. I don't know what she's taking, but I want some of that, right? So Rachel says, I'm going to buy them from her. She buys them from Leah. And what does she, by the way, what does she buy them for? She sells her own night. That night when Yaakov was supposed to come back from the field, he was supposed to spend the night with Rachel, which is the very way that she could possibly conceive. So she is selling the very opportunity that she had to conceive in order to get these fertility plants. She felt like having these fertility plants were made it more likely that she was going to conceive than having that night with Yaakov. Whoa, that's pretty powerful. Think about that, right? So Reuven went out, he found these dudaim, and then after she bought these dudaim, these fertility plants, then something happened. The pasuk tells us that God remembered Rachel. Vayizkar Elohim es Rachel vayishma. God remembered Rachel, and he heard Vayishma Eleh Elokim, and Hashem heard from her. He heard upon her, literally. Vayiftach es Rachma, and he opened her womb. So something shifted inside Rachel. Maybe it was an internal shift. And it sounds like that God heard her in a different way, that maybe she'd been asking, and she'd been begging, and she'd been praying, and something shifted. So was it a different kind of prayer? I don't know. Maybe it was. But she became pregnant after God remembered her. But a second thing happened in that moment, which was after she bought these fertility plants that she so believed they were even more worth it, more likely those fertility plants were going to help her get pregnant than actually spending that night with her husband, that something shifted in her mindset. She saw the opportunity and the chances of her getting pregnant now as a totally new chapter than from what it was before. And so she changed in her mindset. She believed that it was worth it, so she gave up being with Yaakov. But she believed that she could conceive, and so she did. So you could say that God remembered her, but notice that the order of the Pesukim, the storyline goes like this. She bought the plants, she gave up the night with Yaakov, the very way she was going to conceive, and then God remembered her. He heard her, maybe in a different way, and then she conceived. And by the way, even if you want to say it wasn't a mindset shift, look what happens next. She conceives a child, and what does she name the child? The pasuk says, "Vatikra es shemo Yosef." She called his name Yosef, Lamor, which means Yosef Hashem li ben acher. Yosef Hashem li. What does the word Yosef mean? That God has concealed. God has asaf. He's concealed from me, and now I'm able to have a son. As if what was hidden before, it was concealed. She couldn't see it. It was not possible. What's concealed mean? It means that there's something in front of you, but you just can't see it. It's there the whole time, but it's blocked. Somehow there's a blockage, and you're not aware of it. You're not able to access it or see it or touch it. So mindset is what conceals. Conceals means it's been there all along, but when you have this added Yosef, this added ability to see what is already there, that is a shift. That's a result of a shift in mindset. That result of the shift in mindset is perhaps what opened the opportunity for God to remember her, to hear her, and open her womb. How do you outdo your competition? You ask a different question. You change the way that you've been looking at something. You expand the way that you're looking at something, and you believe through this different perspective, you believe through a different and fresh mindset that what was not possible before is now possible moving on. That shift worked for Rachel, and guess what? It works for competition too. So I'll give you an example. So I know that Tim Ferriss shares that one of his first business successes, Tim Ferriss is probably one of the most famous, if not the most famous podcaster in the world. He shares that he noticed that when he was working a sales job, 9 to 5, every sales guy came in, did their sales calls between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. And guess who they reached? They reached the gatekeeper of the decision maker or of the executive that they were trying to reach. And what did the gatekeeper do? Said, sorry, not available. And he was like, hold on a second. This is brutal. We basically spend 8 hours a day calling gatekeepers, not even getting to the people that we want to speak to. And so he said, hold on a second. What if there's something that's concealing me from getting to the gatekeeper? What if the way that I'm seeing this is actually stopping me from doing it? I could do the same strategy, but I'm being concealed from seeing how this could work. And guess what he did? He said, what if I do the opposite? What if instead of calling from 9 to 5 like every sales guy's doing, what if I call from 7 to 8:30 a.m. and from 6 to 7:30 p.m.? And so for a while, he did just that. For those 3 hours a day, he did phone calls only during those times. He reached very often the executives because the gatekeeper wasn't in. And all he changed was not the strategy, but when he was calling, and that came to him, that was unconcealed. It became revealed